Hello again. Before I go into the topic at hand, I would like to mention again that the psyche, just like the body, has several systems that work together, each separate on its own function, yet they all work together to form a complex system, to have a healthy body, a balanced body, a body that we can live this life on this earth through it. So does the psyche. Throughout the videos, these issues have been discussed, but today we are focusing more on the idea of identity. Identity forms part of the psyche, and on its own, it has its own complex system within the whole system of the psyche. Last time, I talked about the persona and the role of the ego in it, and today I would like to talk about, I think, the most ingenious idea that has been addressed in the world of spirituality, awareness, and psychology and philosophy and many other fields is the idea of archetypes. Archetypes have been really defined as many things, but I would like to see them because if you look at all the definitions, it's basically looking at and seeing patterns from a larger perspective. And in this way, we can view everything in life, including ourselves and what we call the external world, in terms of patterns. For example, and it takes the form of a generality. For example, if you take the universe as a whole, all galaxies have a certain archetype, meaning they have certain characteristics, they have certain attributes that we like to call a galaxy. But we're not only talking about physical characteristics, we're talking about its function, why it's there. It has a more transcendent idea than just the idea of what's its role in the universe. Its role is more deep than what we describe, as in not just a physical description, rather it's more in depth of its role, its function, its very existence in the universe. And this applies to everything, including the psyche. In the psyche, the archetypes take the form of identity that's expressed from within to the outside, to the external. And what we mean by that, it means that everyone has these patterns, these general ideas that take form, these general patterns. And it can even take the form of stories, like when we address mythology, for example. It tells us a certain story, or the story of Alice in Wonderland. It has a certain, every character has a certain archetype of what it represents. Or if we take into account the Grimm tales, we can see beyond that. These tales see beyond that what is the general description of the story. It talks about things that are repetitive, a pattern in society that we might notice. And in the psyche, these archetypes, some have described them in certain names, and the most known psychologist that has addressed these, not just from a psychological point of view, from also a mystical or spiritual point of view, is Dr. Carl Jung, which I've mentioned before. And he addressed certain archetypes. He talked about the persona, the shadow, which we have already addressed, the anima, which is the representation of the female energy inside a male, and then the animus, which is the representation of the male energy inside a female. And here we go beyond the actual gender. I mean, gender, yes, does manifest itself in physically through certain characteristics and physiological changes or hormones. But this is one aspect of it. We're talking here from a psychological aspect, which basically means it has a certain way of manifesting. And both of these energies are existent in every gender. For example, because these are very generalized form of patterns that are found within the psyche, of course, for it to be individually manifested, it takes the form from the image of the general pattern. It has to take a form of subjectivity that is expressed within each individual. For example, the female energy within a woman may express itself in certain ways, like a very nurturing mother or a very intuitive artist. That is one way for the female energy to express itself, through a woman. And through a man, for example, yes, the female energy may express itself through also art, for example, or a certain creativity, because that belongs to the female energy. And the male energy through women may express itself through assertive behavior, organizational behavior, because that takes the form of a male energy. And through, you can see the same counterpart in the male, through a male person. Just like the physical hormones in the body are secreted more, for example, in the like estrogen is secreted more in the female more than the male, and testosterone more in the male than the female. The same thing happens with the male and female energy in the psyche. One is expressed more than the other. The female energy is creative, intuitive, nurturing. Can take the form of a mother, a muse, a siren, and many other female roles. And the male energy may take the form of a hero or an executive. Another archetype which is talked about is the trickster. The trickster is a very interesting archetype because it exists in all of us, yet it's manifested differently, as we talked about, subjectively. For example, in some people it may be a jester, some people a joker, some people it might be a prankster. And this particular archetype is not always accepted in society or within people, because it's a form of this very playful, I don't take anything seriously kind of role. And sometimes it can take the role of the fool, where it can take the role of the fool while we think that this person does not know anything, but this person is actually observing and noticing everything that is happening around her or around him. And these particular archetypes are then within the psyche, which we talked about, has a healing ability. And if, just like the other parts of ourselves which are repressed, we repress the expression of these archetypes through a subjective way, they tend to live then in the shadow. And in the shadow, they will try to express themselves nonetheless. And this way, it comes out in a negative way. And sometimes they try to not only express themselves through you by, for example, you doing through trickster a certain prank, which may be interpreted that it's mean or unnecessary or unaccepted by others. It may project itself onto others, meaning just like sometimes you criticize other people's behavior when this behavior is within yourself, as this is a defense mechanism, so does the archetype is sometimes projected. For example, a man which has issues with his female energy, which is not really expressed, or he had a turbulent relationship with his mother, the anima will be projected onto the females or the women he actually may work with or has a relationship with or marries even. And it becomes like his own archetype is starting to speak to him through this projection. And to wake him up, for him to notice that you are repressing your own energy. You are repressing your own self, an aspect of yourself. And you need to notice it, or this particular pattern of projection repeat itself. And he meets all these women and end up with a turbulent relationship, because this same relationship, which he did not address, which he did not try to heal from the beginning, the psyche is trying to remind him through projection that you need to address this issue. Another important archetype is the inner child. And this particular archetype, we are dealing with whatever happened within the person, within the individual, or to the individual, and the events happened to the person before they actually reach puberty. And whether they're positive or negative, they form the archetype of the inner child. So basically, even if you grow up and you mature, this part of you remains within you. And this particular archetype was introduced by Carl Jung, and one author, Carolyn Myss, has addressed it more thoroughly. And according to Myss, and this quote is taken from Wikipedia, according to Myss, its presence ranges from childish to childlike longing for the innocent, regardless of age, and compromises sub-archetypes: wounded child, abandoned or orphan child, dependent child, magical innocent child, nature child, divine child, and eternal child. I have linked to 2 of these particular sub-archetypes for you to watch. And during the awareness process, we deal with the repression of these particular archetypes. What we aim at, as we talked about before, is you to be yourself in all its forms. The psyche, to have a balanced psyche that expresses itself in all its forms, whether it's the male energy or female energy, or the inner child, which, if it has any type of trauma, needs to be addressed. Of course, this topic is very wide, and I've linked to some more information below. And if you wish to address this more in depth, please look up any topic, books, or anything online that has title of archetypes or archetypal nature, and you'll find many things about this topic. We will continue our discussion of identity in the next video. Until then, bye.